Nisha this side. So, welcome to the Big Data Show. And today would be the first round of the mock interview. So, can you start with your introduction and like the what are you currently doing and what different projects have you worked upon?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Nisha. Yeah, I'm Sai Varun Kumar. I'm a recent graduate of from Northeastern University with a master's degree in data analytics engineering. Prior to that, I have worked as a data engineer at DXC Technology, where my roles and responsibilities include building and robust ETL pipelines from end to end in AWS and Azure cloud. So my main responsibilities was like I need to create a pipeline from source to the destination, like a source to the sink. With in between there we have layers like silver and bronze layers. So in between we need to include SQL transformations, and also we need to make sure that data quality is a priority. So we also included the data quality checks in between when we are creating the pipeline. Once the pipeline is created, so we wanted to and also I'm responsible for automating the work pipeline workflow as well as making sure the documentation of the part is ready for the next to use. So this is the main responsibilities from my end, and I have worked on few uh, a few projects which are related to the mainly data quality checks as well as the certain ingestion tool, where my main the data quality tool talks about that creating the quality checks for the pipeline to perform, like where we can create timeliness check, consistency check, integrity check, so that we can add up these checks to the pipeline when the pipeline is running either from the source side or the sink side. So we can make sure that when the data is when the once the pipeline is successful, we can see that how many checks has been passed and how many checks has been failed. So we can either rerun the pipeline or if we want to proceed to the next stage. This is how we can analyze by looking at the dashboard. We have created the dashboard in Power BI. So from that, we can see that how many have been passed and how many has been failed. Apart from that, we also included the anomaly detection part, where if the data is incorrect, and then if there is a drastic change in the data of the particular column or the particular value, which is not appropriate to the previous historical value. So if we are showing it in the dashboard so that we can easily go back and check where the data is missing and where the problem is going wrong. So these are the kinds of checks we have implemented. Apart from that, ingestion, when it comes to the ingestion tool, this is like ingesting data from different services, like either from the data lakes to the data warehouses, and either from the databases to OLAP systems to the OLTP systems to the OLAP systems. So by building the dimensional model out of it. And in between, again, we'll be including the quality checks as well. It is not like just a basic checks, whether the constraints checks, either if the column is having following that particular range or not. These kind of checks we implement and then try to proceed further. And these are the main things. And apart from that, when it comes to my master's program, I also worked as a data analyst and teaching assistant, where my responsibilities, like I guided the mentored 40 plus students in that particular program, where they have courses of data warehousing and business intelligence, where I'll be helping them to design and model the dimensions and create an NTL pipe, help them to design their projects of end-to-end pipelines on-prem as well as on the cloud. On-prem, for the on-prem, we have utilized Talent Open Studio to create an ETL pipelines, and for when it comes to the cloud, we have chosen like to either like it's a student's responsibility either to go with AWS or GCP based on their requirements and what they wanted to learn. And, like I am responsible for helping them if they were stuck in the particular middle in the projects. Apart from that, when in the analyst, so where I was, yeah, I've been as a data analyst for the one of the program which to calculus, which conducted by the Northeastern University, where uh, college helps school students, like a Boston Public School is the one of the schools. They try to help the summer program by teaching them the mathematics and some other extracurricular activities for the students, where I'll be responsible for analyzing the historical data. This program has started in the year of 1995. So I wanted to analyze the data and how the students are progressing up before the program and after the program. This kind of analysis we have performed, and also showed in the form of a dashboards. And this is about me. And if when it comes to the academic projects, I have done my personal projects, which are mostly related to the building and ETL pipelines from end to end on AWS cloud. And also this my main motto is to how to create an end-to-end pipeline with error prone and then robust pipeline, which can be scalable
Okay.
based on the requirements. So I focused on that particular part when I'm creating instead of focusing on the data. So the data is in-house generated data. So apart from that, when the data is ready. So I started either using the data lakes, S3 data lake, or sometimes I used OLTP systems like a databases like Postgres and MySQL Server, and try to create a dimensional model on top of it. So like the 2 3 dimensions and fact table. And for the dimensions, we know that there will be some dimensions which change slowly. So based on that, I have implemented SCD type 2 for that particular cases, and then like a created pipeline from end to end. And also I have implemented upsert operations like if there is a date for the previous record, it just updates the rate. When there is a new record coming in, it just inserts the
Yeah,
data.
I
These kind of
see.
operations I have performed on that using AWS Cloud. And
Okay.
yeah,
So you
and recently I have
mentioned like,
also
yeah,
yeah.
during your project explanations, like, so you have some columns, and based on the past history, you are determining whether there is some variation or corrupt data in that column, right? So how you are
uh,
doing those data quality checks, like what you are comparing, and how you are coming to the conclusion that the data is corrupt inside that column. So how you are
like
determining that?
yeah, for that particular column, right? If it is like a more if column is ranging between 1 to 100, and if we see the value is around 900 or 1000, we can easily identify the value which came is not in the range of 1 to 100. So we can easily identify and say that this particular row has inconsistent data or
Okay, so
inaccurate
you have
data. So
defined predefined rules you
range
have
checks,
created. Okay,
predefined
okay.
quality checks where before creating a pipeline.
And you also mentioned like you have automated the pipeline. So how you have automated, like what different tools you have used to automate the pipeline end to
Yeah,
end?
yes, I can say that like it differs from the project to project. For one of the project, I have used like a ready Azure Data Factory as well as Azure Data Factory. Sometimes I have used directly inbuilt triggers, and sometimes I use the step functions, which is already there, like logic apps. I can say that in Azure. Uh, and I'm trying to link with the AWS step functions. And one of I have used already predefined tools is AWS step functions and Apache Airflow. When it comes to the Azure Logic apps, when it comes to the Google, there is one more component called Google Cloud Composer, as well as a Google Scheduler. If I only wanted to schedule the jobs, these are the different tools I have applied for orchestrating
So you
pipelines.
have worked on step function, right, which is by
Mhm.
AWS, right? And similarly, we
Yeah,
have Airflow, which is again open source. So you
yeah.
have worked on both the tools. So what would be the difference? Like if I am working on AWS services and designing my ETL pipeline, should I go for AWS step function to schedule my workflow, or should I go for Airflow? Like what should be the determining factor here?
Can you repeat the question? Like, is your pipeline is completely on
So
AWS
I have,
or
yes, I have my pipeline on AWS. So say I have some S3 function, S3 bucket, and then I have some Lambda functions on top of that, which is reading the file from S3 bucket and again writing back to S3. So I have this simple workflow. So should I set up an Airflow to schedule my this pipeline, or should AWS step function would be a good choice for me?
I would say AWS step function would be a good choice because Airflow to configure the Airflow is a really big task before scheduling it. Like there was a thing created like a cluster, and then you need to make sure the configurations are correct, and there should be an open port in. Like there are other dependencies which are related to configuration. So I would say AWS step function is straightforward, which is easy to include with the 300 Lambda function. Apart from that, there is one more tool. I can say that event bridge, which you can, if you want to orchestrate it, you can either use by defining the event bridge rules whenever the event comes. So you can just trigger the pipeline.
There is also AWS managed Apache Airflow.
Yeah,
Would that
exactly.
be again like a good choice here if we don't want to go with
No,
the
like that's what
management?
you it is. I would say it is a heavy task to create and orchestrate it. Whereas we already have the same configurations and same features in the AWS step functions. I would suggest to AWS chef function would be the great choice. I would suggest only Airflow when you have all the configurations already written in Python and all the transformations also written in the Python, so you can directly use the AWS Airflow thing for the orchestration part.
Okay. So you also mentioned about the timeliness rule, right? So how
Mhm.
so there is some SLA that you have defined and you are doing the timeliness rule. So on what date basis are you generating some events when the file is loaded to destination? So how you are determining the timeliness rule on what timestamp?
Like when I talk about the timeliness part, like I just wanted to verify the data when the data has arrived to our destination. Since we are not worrying about the source when the data has arrived in the source, we just wanted to see based on the column, the timestamp column when the pipeline ran, and we are just verifying the timestamp which has been generated by our application or the pipeline. We are just verifying it with the date time of the current timestamp, just checking if that is
So
ranging
from
in
where it is pulling the data for all this timestamp? So the tool
from the
from where it is pulling all the data?
you meant the source data or the target data.
So target data. So how is there a way like the tool is pulling the data for all the timestamps when the data is loaded to destination and then determining the rules?
Once the data is loaded, then we are trying to perform the quality checks on top of it. Once the
Okay, so
data has
this is
been
part of your quality.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly, quality
okay,
check.
it is part of. Okay. So you mentioned about the dimensional modeling. So can you explain that? What do you mean by dimensional modeling?
Yes, I would say that like normally when we talk about the data or application data or transactional data, it is just like a day-to-day transactions which happens whenever when we talk about the web applications, they will be having the events of transaction happening on day to day. That is just a transactional database. When I talk about the dimensional modeling, if that is mainly for analytical purpose. So it as the transactional base is not much scalable and not mainly not for the analytical purpose. So we wanted to have the historical data as well as the current data. We'll try to combine with the historical data and try to perform aggregates on top of that and store it in the dimensional model. Like we'll create all the dimensions if the users are defined already. Like users come and join this can be users can be a dimension. If we talk about the post can be a dimension, and also like we'll create a fact out of it, all the transaction, all the what are the events happening in that particular thing. If we wanted to analyze how many posts a user has created, from that if we can see the historical data and try to find how many posts has created, how many likes has come for the each post. This cannot be done in OLTP databases as it is very huge, and we need to perform a multiple join operations, and then it can be a lot of compute powers. What we can do is by aggregating the data into a dimensional model, which can be either using a bulk dimensional model or like a relational dimensional model, which based on our requirements. So then we can design it and we can try to perform analytical queries on top of that. This is what I meant about the dimension.
So we have different data models, right? So like you mentioned fact and dimensions where we have star
Mhm.
model, snowflake, right? And also
Yes,
there is
that's not.
currently going on one big table design, right?
Yeah, one big table
So what is
dimension.
the difference in the star schemas and the one big table designs that is more popular now in the data analytics world?
Yeah, when we talk about the star schema, we can say that all the dimensions are denormalized, and we can have all it in one table, and then we'll have one fact table, and all the dimensions are interlinked to the only one fact table. This is how the star schema works, and as I mentioned, it is denormalized. If we no need to join with the other dimensions, like if we have a time dimension, no need to join with the date time dimensions. As the dimension is already denormalized, we can have a good so we can reduce the joining part as the compute power is already no need to worry about the compute power. And but when we try to backtrack it, there are some few cons of the start schema as well. Like we will not be able to go to the lower cardinality level, so to find which what are the dimensions are the interlinked. Like if we have an hierarchy, when I talk about the snowflake schema, there all the dimensions are having a lower cardinality, like a time and date, month, year, these kind of lower cardinalities, where we can go and trace back to the which part of the things. And when you say about the big table, everything is interlinked into the one big table, and each column has been stored in the form of array struct types. All the values will be like in particular column will be one whole table will be stored in that particular column. And here we are trying to avoid joins, but still there will be things if the table is increasing rapidly. I would say that this is not a good approach to follow with the one big table model. There are some trade-offs between each and every model based on the use business use cases. If based on the end user's perspective, whether these are used by the scientists or the analysts, based on that we try to design that so that they can be efficient to analyze the process.
So, are you aware of like cache and persist in Spark?
I'm not much aware of it, but I would say like cache is nothing but like trying to uh, store the data in memory or in cache of that. But I don't have a good picture of persistent.
Okay, okay. So, are you aware of like the what is broadcast join in Spark?
Yes, broadcast join is nothing but if you have two tables, one is a large table and one is a smaller table. Uh, if you wanted to join both the tables, and as we know that Spark uses a distributed network, so uh, the large table will be distributed in different executors, and then we try to join with the same another table. If the other table is smaller, so we can just use the broadcast join. So what does the broadcast join do is the smaller table will be inserted in each and every executor, so that no need to do the shuffling part. So it avoids the extra computation power and try to optimize the process. So that's where the broadcast joins helps a lot, and also it is like mainly used in for this particular cases.
So, in what scenario broadcast join can result in out of memory error?
I would say when the both the tables has a huge memory, when the data set of the both tables are very large, I can say that then it might be uh, whenever we try to perform an operations of the joining, it might give an out of memory error, right, as the memory is
But if the two tables are large, would that result into broadcast join?
no,
Is there
it
any
doesn't
parameter
fall
that
under the
determines it?
it doesn't fall under broadcast join.
Okay. So, like,
Yeah.
okay. So consider one scenario, right? So you have been tasked with creating one pipeline. So you have been given the requirement that you have the S3 bucket, right? And there is some source team which is pushing some CSV files on your S3 bucket on some random basis. So there is no particular time on which they ship the file, right? And you have been tasked with the requirement that as soon as the team pushes the file, you want to process that data, right? And you want to push that to again some S3 bucket from where your snowflake snowpipe and all can be triggered and take the data inside the snowflake table. So you want to design this whole flow. So what different services of AWS you will use here, and how will you automate your this pipeline?
Yeah. For event thing, I can try to use either AWS Lambda or Event Bridge for capturing the events. Whenever the object is uploaded in the S3 bucket, we'll get the notification saying that object has been uploaded. From there, in the Lambda function, we can define to either move, like to copy the data into another S3 bucket, like I said, just a replication of that object, so that we'll not be worrying about the data loss. So from there, once the copy is done through the AWS Lambda, we can try to create a snow pipe linked with the S3 bucket, which is the second S3 bucket, and try to uh, move the data into the Snowflake data warehouse. And for that particular case, once this is done, we can automate using the step functions and see that once the data has been copied from the Lambda, it can trigger the snow pipe, so that as the data is already in the second S3 bucket, it moves the data and try to more copy the data into the data warehouse.
So you mentioned from Lambda it will trigger the snow pipe. So can you explain that?
As I said, for orchestrating, we can define
But is there a need
we
of
can
orchestration like you have already used in the event-driven architecture here, right? So what you would
Okay,
be
yeah, yes,
orchestrating
yes.
here?
I understand now. Yes, we don't need to use any step functions over here for the orchestrator, as we are already linked using the event based as I mentioned. So once the event is happened, the Lambda gets triggered, and then in the Lambda itself, we can try to define the one more like a function saying that once the data has been loaded into the another bucket, to trigger the snow pipe by calling the function or the by calling the event so that it can happen uh, from
Okay.
in the same process.
Okay, so in this pipeline, right? So say you have like 5 files loaded for a day, right? And out of that, somehow 4 files have been processed successfully and copied, but one file has somehow failed. And now you have been tasked with the requirement that if there is any failure, you need to reprocess that as well. So how you will manage this use case in the current architecture?
Yeah, for the failures, I'll try to implement the same logic in the Lambda once Lambda function is successful or failure. I would say I'll try to copy the failed files into another folder, saying that these are the files not processed so far, and we will be having a separate folder of like a processed files and non-processed files. And we can try to include a one more function saying that um, whichever the non-processed will try to trigger it once again and see if what is going wrong. It can try to reprocess once again if if still the data is not processed. So we need to go back and check whether the issue is with the file format or the file the data which is containing in that particular file. These are the things I can implement in the existing architecture. I'm not sure like whether I'm in the right perspective or not, but this is how I can do it.
So you would create two different folders and copy the files, failed ones to
Yeah,
there, based upon
yeah,
your logic of Lambda. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So here, like, how Snowflake will create a table. So are you aware of like how can we? So once SnowPy will be triggered and it will be copied. So how Snowflake is integrated with the AWS S3. So are you aware of that?
Uh, yes, I have created a basic snow pipe, but it is not like a complex part. Where I have used the AWS key and the staging table in the Snowflake, where the once the data is coming from, once the file is uploaded in S3, we try to create a connection between S3 and the Snowflake and try to copy the data from the file to the staging table. Once the staging table is ready, try to copy the data to the main table, which is already having the previous table. And once the data is copied, it try to empty the staging table and stays like that. This is just a basic flow which I have implemented, but I don't have a pretty good knowledge of like a enterprise
Okay.
level SnowPy.
So does SnowPipe also deletes the data from the staging S3 bucket after reading the file, or will it keep the file as it is there?
No, no. It will keep the file as it is, but I guess it will mark as a file read or something. Like there is a check mark saying that file has been processed in that metadata of the Snowpy. I don't
Okay.
remember exactly, but there is a check
So
mark saying
okay.
that this file has been already processed, something like that.
Okay. So what is transient and permanent tables in Snowflake?
I don't have much idea about the Snowflake data warehouse. Like I just implemented
Okay.
like a tables, but I haven't gone in depth into that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No problem. So you mentioned about slowly changing dimension as well. So can you maybe tell me some use case where you have implemented SCD2 type maybe? So what was the use case and how you implemented a SCD2?
Yes. Let's just talk about the users dimension. So we know that users has the username and then address and the state, city, all these things in that particular table. But in the email ID, phone number as well. Uh, we know that user's name will not be changing much. So no need to talk about the name part and email part. Well, let's just go into the address or the state whenever if the user has been transferred to other particular different state. So the address might be changing for that particular user. So what we wanted to do, we need to make sure that address has been updated with the latest address, and we don't wanted to lose the previous history of the user where he is coming from, and then he has been so far in between. So what I have tried to implement is a type 2 SCD, which is mainly for the uh, user saying that existing address and then start date and the end date of it, where current address is that particular, where I can say that Boston is my current address, and then it was starting from this particular year and then ended in 1999 something, or we can make it either once I move to New York State, New York City. So I'll try to update the Boston and with the New York City and say that end date of the Boston is like on that particular day where I moved, and I'll make the start date of that particular New York City is the day which I have moved to the New York City, and make the end date as a null. That's how I implemented a CD type too. But there are similar use
Mm-hmm.
cases for the we can use it for either state as well as the city and the address, full address.
Okay. So say you have created one data warehouse, right? And somehow there are some duplication inserted inside your warehouse tables, right? So how you
Mm,
will ensure that there would be any duplication, and how you will dedupe all the duplicated rows from your fact and dimensions.
For duplication, I can make sure of that using the surrogate surrogate keys just for the key, I can say duplication. I'll see if the primary key of that OLTP database is coming. I'll just check the if that data is already present with the same column, like if we are checking with the particular primary key from the OLTP database and try to verify if that column is that row is already exists, and I'll try to avoid not to insert into the data dimensions table. So that's how I can try to avoid the duration. And I'm not sure like whether this is an correct approach or not, but I would say uh, I'll also see if the count of that particular rows has been like, is more than one. Then it is also like it means that we have the duplicate rows in that particular table. So and then we can try to drop that particular rows, and that's how I try to avoid it. But
So you can either
maybe
handle
I'm
at the
not
data
correctly.
ingestion level, and second at the data quality level where you can check the
Yeah,
rows.
yeah, yes.
Okay. So can you share your screen? Like I have some SQL question to share. Let me
Uh, sh-
also share the file. This is a SQL problem, right? So consider this as a retail store, right? So consider Amazon, right? Where we have different orders as well as different products, right? So every order is associated with a product ID, and inside a given order, you can have 3, 4 products that you can order, right? So in this particular order details table, you will have 3 columns. One is the order ID, which would be the unique identifier for the order that you have placed, right? And inside
mhm.
that single order you can have placed the entry for multiple products, right? So this product
Yeah,
ID will be the unique identifier for that product,
got
and
it.
the
Yeah.
quantity will determine that for a given product ID how many quantity that you have ordered, right? So this would be like for a single order we can have multiple product ID and the quantity associated with that product ID. Okay, so this would be the order details table that we have. Can you scroll
Mhm.
down? Yeah. So if you go to the table once it is down, and then we can
Oh, yeah.
come to the challenge.
Uh,
Yeah. So this is the table, right? So if you see for a given order ID, we have 1, 2, 3, 3 as a product. So
yeah.
there is a possibility that you have ordered the same product multiple times with different quantity or
Okay.
same quantity. So this is
Okay.
so order ID and product ID are not a primary key of this table. Okay. So
Mhm.
we have this possibility that a single product ID can be repeated in a given order. Similarly, for
Mhm.
different orders, we have the combination of product ID and quantity. So now, if you can go to the problem statement now. Okay. So what you need to find out from this order details table, so you need to write a SQL code to find the order ID of the imbalanced order. So what order will be qualified as an imbalanced order if the maximum quantity of any product in the order. So for a given order, say you have 4 different products with 4 different
Mm,
quantities, right? So if
yeah.
quantity of any given product in an order is greater than the average quantity of a given order, then it would be termed as an imbalance order. So say for
Okay.
a given order ID 1, you have average as 12. Similarly for 2, it
Mhm.
is coming as 13, right? And now the maximum quantity for any product is say 15, which is greater than the average that we have for all orders. Then it will be
Come again.
qualified as an
Come
imbalance
again. The
order.
last step. I
Okay.
didn't get the last
So
step.
we have to find out the imbalance order from this given table,
Correct.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Any order will be qualified as imbalance if the quantity of a given product, right? If
Okay.
the quantity of a given product is greater than the average quantity of all the orders.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So average quantity of all the different orders that we have, if any quantity of a given product is greater than that, then that order will be qualified as an imbalance. So
Okay.
we have also an output that is expected. If you can go to that output.
Yeah.
So the order 1 and 3 would be qualified as an imbalance order. So if you can go to the order ID 1, so we have different product, different quantity. So if the
Yeah.
quantity of a given product is greater than the average quantity of all the different products, then it will be qualified as an imbalance. So try to look at the problem statement and as well as the input.
Yeah. Before I jump in, I just wanted to clarify, like as you mentioned,
If you
um,
can read the
we need
problem
to,
statement once, I think it would be more clear.
as per my understanding, let's just wanted to
Also,
confirm
can you
before
zoom a
I.
bit your screen control
Yeah.
plus plus? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So here, I need to find the order ID, which when we say when the for the product three, there are 15 is the total count of that particular product, and then when we see for the product two, 10, and then product one, 12. 15, when we see that 15 is coming from the order ID one is greater than of all the average of the product ID products, 10 plus 15 plus
Average
12
of all the
divided by
orders,
3,
average quantity of all the orders,
average
average
quantity of
quantity of the orders,
all orders. Okay, all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the order IDs.
all different orders.
Uh,
So
Wait,
order ID
like,
1 has different average, order ID 2 have different average. So if a
okay,
given
okay, got it.
quantity is greater than that, then it would be qualified as an imbalance.
Okay, got it, got it. First, what I'll do is, as the product ID is not unique, I'll just sum up the product ID based on group by and sum the quantity of each product, so that I'll be able to get only the uh, distinct products of that particular, and then try to get the whole sum of the quantity of that particular product. I'll do that particular step, and then
So
try
your group
to
by
go
would be
with
on
the
the product ID or on the product
like
ID,
both
order ID
product
com.
ID as well as the order ID.
Okay,
Yeah. So that for each particular order ID will be staying the same, and instead of getting 1, 2, 3, 3, I'll try to get 1, 2, 3, and then 15 over here in the first step.
okay, okay.
Yeah. Let me. You want me to write the code, right?
Yeah, you can first write the steps like you mentioned, and then
Oh,
we can go to the SQL
yeah.
query.
This is one
Mm-hmm.
CTE, I can say that. From this, we
Okay.
can just move to the next step. I can say that I think this should work for getting the uh, imbalanced order IDs. What I'm doing in the step one is trying to aggregate the total quantity based on product ID and then order ID, and we'll get this. All what all columns we'll be having is order ID in this CTA. These three things will be available from this step one. So from step one, we can try to move to try to find the uh, right quantity which is greater than average of the total quantity based on the order ID. So I'm trying to group by the order ID, and trying to see the filter out the rows which are having the quantities more than the average of the total quantity of that particular order. Is this
So
making
will the
sense?
having clause execute after the group operation or before that?
After group operation.
Okay. And like so it total quantity is not an aggregated operation, right? So will this
Mm-hmm.
work in the having clause?
Come again, what do you mean? This
So
total
total
quantity?
quantity is a row, right? It is a column, right? And you are
Mm-hmm.
comparing it with the aggregation of the total quantity. So will the total quantity works in the having clause?
Yes,
Because
it's,
it supports the aggregated operations, right? The group by.
yeah, correct. Yeah, having supports the aggregation operations. That's for,
So is total quantity column is an aggregated operation?
you meant this one or this one?
You have the place where you have put having total quantity greater than average total quantity.
Uh-huh.
So in the question we have been asked if the maximum quantity of a order is greater than the average quantity of all
Okay,
the
okay,
orders,
sorry.
right?
Maximum quantity of the order. Yeah.
But you have also asked in the question that you want to compare it with average quantity of all the orders.
all
not
the
with a grouped order. Mhm.
all the average quantity of all products in that order, like in that order in the sense for only this order, right?
All the orders in the
One,
table.
two, three, four, five, six.
Yes, yes. So if you have
Okay,
say
okay.
or average as
Uh,
10 for order 1, 12, 13,
okay, okay.
14, that quantity
Got
should be
it.
greater
Got
than all the average.
Okay, then we can write a one more subquery saying that select star from the main table and select
Hmm.
average of quantity uh, from our CTE, from this CTE. We'll get the average of it and then we'll compare it over here.
But that will be again the grouped average, right? We want the individual average of all the orders.
I meant here we are not like I meant this approach, but I'm not sure whether I'm going in the right track. This here we are not grouping uh, uh, with the any product ID or order ID. So we'll get the whole total average of the quantity. You meant, is it like that, or we can create a one more CTE just to get the average of it and then compare it with this value. If this is not working, like get the average of it.
Yeah, this because here select average total quantity, you are
Mm-hmm.
getting a single value of all the order average, right? And in our
Yeah, yeah,
question, we have been asked to get a individual average of a given order.
like
So
individual
if I have
average
an
for
order ID 1, if I want an average quantity. If I have order ID 2, I want another average quantity. And then I want to
okay,
compare the maximum quantity with all those average values.
all those average values, like we wanted to store the order average for order ID 1, order ID 2, order ID 3, order ID 4.
So say, so if you go to the table, right? So say if I have for order ID 1, the quantity max is 15, right? So that 15
Yeah.
should be greater than the average quantity of order 1, average quantity of order 2, average quantity of order 3 as well.
Okay, 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 got it. For this case, yeah,
So your this second step won't work because this is
yeah,
calculating a single average value for all the
yeah,
orders.
yeah, correct.
So you are going in
I'll
the right
create.
direction by doing the group by. Maybe you can try to create some CT with calculating the aggregation and then do
Yeah,
this
I'm
validation check. Yeah.
one more CTA for group by with to just to get the average of order IDs.
So Varun, just think in the direction, right? So we want to compare, right, the
Yeah.
quantity, max quantity with the average, right? So do you want to compare it
Mhm.
with every average or just the max or min average or something?
That's what I just got a min and maximum we can take off from the CTA too.
Maybe if you can explain me the logic, no need to write it down. Yeah. If you can
Okay.
explain what you're
Uh,
thinking.
what what I was thinking is we can to filter out the rows which are having the maximum orders. So total quantity is greater than like either the min and maximum of the CTE2. Like I can say that max of CTE2 from this average table, from the step 2 which we get right from this average maximum of average total orders. We can compare with that particular value and then we can easily see that total quantity is greater than the max of this particular average table and we'll get all the order IDs from that.
Okay. Yeah. I think that will work. Just require some tweaking. Yeah. So I think we can
Okay,
move to
group.
the next part. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
if you can scroll down, there are some other questions. So this is a normal Python question, right? Where you have been given a code snippet and you need
Hmm.
to tell like what could be the output. So you have been given a Python function, right? And a list has been passed as a parameter to this function, and we are doing some append operation, right? And then
Yeah.
finally we are not returning anything and just printing the final my list. So what could be the output of this code snippet? So will it print the original list or will it print one,
Uh,
2, 3, 5?
it I, I I think it just prints the original list 1, 2, 3. As we are not returning, it won't pass the value to this modified list, I guess. So it won't update the existing list.
Okay. It would print 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
you can go back and check because this is an iterable, and if we pass rebel as an input, it would make changes to the actual list. If it
Okay.
would be
Okay.
some variable or something, then it won't change the value of that. Yeah. Can we
Yeah.
go down?
Uh,
So yeah, this is some another Python question, right? So you have been given an input string, the big data show, right? and you have been asked to rotate this particular list k times clockwise, right? So say if you have
Mm-hmm.
been given the input string as the big data show and the k value is to be 2, then this would be rotated twice clockwise. So OW will come in the front, right? It would be
Mm-hmm.
W, yeah, W, yeah, OW and the big data SH, right? So you need to write a Python
Okay.
program for this. Can you explain like what you're thinking and
What I
trying to
was
implement?
thinking, yeah, before I was, so wanted to iterate over the string and just wanted to store the all the uh, things in a particular list and try to swap the last two values to the front and then again join the list into the string back. So this is my approach, but I'm not sure whether
So
this
how will
is
you swap the string? Will you swap W with T or O with H? How will you swap it? Is it a, if you compare it with the output, is it a case of swapping?
no. Like it is not swapping kind of thing. Like it is just moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
getting the last two values and inserting it in the front of it.
Mm-hmm. So
Trunk,
do you need to
trimming.
iterate the list in that case?
Mm, no need to iterate, but but I might lost in this. I think I'm not sure how.
So can we do indexing in string?
Yeah. You meant the slicing or what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, yes, we can do the slicing of this and just try to give pass the k value in that particular. I would say I'm not sure if I'm doing it correct or something. If I pass the k value as -2, I think it will print only those two values.
So in this particular string, what particular -2 index will represent?
0.
You mean O? Okay.
Yeah, sorry. And from there, I can just take the O and W out of it and join it with the insert it into the front or something. Am I
Can
going
you try
something
to write it
wrong?
down?
This what I'm trying to do here in this S string, we'll get the last two values of the OW and then trying to join with the existing input string. And I wanted to remove the zero OW from that. I think Python has a two this function to trim and right trim. You can trim the data uh, from the right with the k values and join with insert the trimmed value in the front of that. Is that correct? I cannot hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I was speaking on mute. So I was saying, yeah, we can create two different slices and then using the concatenate operator, we can join the two strings back. It would be doable by that. Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
I think we are good. Yeah. So do you have any questions? Yeah. Or I think
No questions. I don't know. I just
so
wanted
related
to
to the
see.
feedback, I think you perform good, right? It just like you need to. So whenever there are some questions, right, or some scenario questions, or so
Mm-hmm.
you need to be clear, like what interviewer is asking, and you need to ask more questions as well to more clarify the concept. So, for example, in
Okay.
the scenario of S3 and all other things, other determining factor could be don't make any assumptions, right? You can also ask like if the what would be the file size, what can be the different frequencies, so Lambda might not
Okay.
be a good fit for every situation, right? You might not to use Spark or other services. And
Okay.
similarly, there can be other questions, yeah, that can be
Yes. Yeah.
handled. Like, do we want some
Got it.
monitoring aspect? Do we want some event handling, SNS, if failure notification? So all different things can be there that we can ask. Also on the SQL side, right? Whenever try to give any answer, I try to read the question thoroughly, and if any doubt, be clear first, and then only attempt and try to solve the question. Yeah. So that is
Okay.
another thing that you should also work upon. Yeah.
Got
You can also stop sharing. Yeah. So that's mostly it. Yeah. So concept wise, it's almost good. Yeah. And but yeah, just work on this small things. Yeah. And yeah, otherwise it's all good. And
Okay.
thank you
Okay.
for your
I'll
time.
make sure all these things. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much for your time.